about. But special guest is Lavinia, who's got an amazing background in blockchain. And is going to talk to us. I think, Lavinia, if it's okay, I'm ad-libbing a little bit here, so maybe ask a few questions. How did you get into blockchain? A little bit about the work that you do and the network that you've created, I think would be useful. But first of all, perhaps introduce yourself.
Course. Okay, so first of all, just thank you so much for the opportunity to be on the call. And Mark, it's great to meet you in person. I know we've been communicating on LinkedIn. So a little bit about myself. So I have been in the blockchain space since 2017. I got into the space because I formerly ran a consultancy, a financial well-being consultancy. And the objective of that consultancy was to help people to have a better relationship with their money. So I was a little bit ahead of the curve when it came to financial well-being. At the time, it was all about fintechs and the sort of challenger banks. But my focus at the time was more on how do people relate to their money? How do they feel? What do they say? What do they think about money? Because all of those things are very tangible to the relationship that you will have with money and how you deal with money. So I was doing that. And of course, if you're working in that space, so it wasn't financial advice, again, it was financial well-being, helping you to become your best advisor. You have to understand what the landscape of finances and particularly personal finances looks like. And so as I was delving into that space and working in that space, I kept hearing about Bitcoin and cryptocurrency. And so we're going back to 2016 now, so very early days. And at that time, it was definitely the dark web for you to be able to engage in that space. And I definitely was not in that space, the dark web space. And I'm not technical, so I'm not a coder or anything like that. So I didn't have a sort of introducer. I just kept hearing about Bitcoin and cryptocurrency. And so as I was learning more, I just didn't know how to, how can I put it, test the ground, purchase Bitcoin and all the rest of it. And then I started hearing about blockchain technology. And this seemed a little bit more intriguing to me because I kept hearing about blockchain for good. And that was something that was very important to me because the work that I was doing in financial well-being, it was focused more on women because unfortunately, unfortunately, and it's still the case, that most women will retire in poverty simply because of the gender pay gap, the fact that, women will take time off work to look after children. So all of these gaps will result in women earning less and therefore contributing less to their pension. So my focus when I was doing the financial well-being work was on helping women to overcome some of the barriers that they had and felt in regards to money. So my essence of, or my interest in blockchain came from that sort of perspective in regards to, how can we use blockchain technology to help close the gender gap, to help create more financial equity and also gender equality? Because, of course, one of the key things about blockchain is there's no gatekeeper. And so ultimately, and as I have found, is that the only person who's getting in between you and you utilizing, understanding, creating, building, adding value to the blockchain ecosystem is ourselves, is us. So that really intrigued me. And as I started learning, I got to understand, of course, that blockchain is not the same as Bitcoin. And this is a very kind of novice mistake that many people make. And so I started learning more about blockchain, not just only for good, but blockchain enterprise and how it could be used for business. And it just blew my mind and opened up my mindset and my perspective about how we can do business. the future of business, the future of money, the future of engagement using this technology. And yes, it's the Wild West. Yes, there's lots of bad actors in the space, as there is in any industry, particularly a new industry. And but it's still an exciting space, and it's still a technology, in my opinion. And also, I think this opinion is validated by the number of brand names in the financial world and outside of the financial world, so business, consultancy, who are moving and who are utilizing blockchain technology. So that's how I got into this space. And that was, I got a job in blockchain, and I started working and understanding and learning and buying, because I'm very much the sort of person, I don't want to teach what I haven't done. And so then after I left the company I was working with, I started Women in Blockchain Talks. It's 4 years now. It's an award-winning platform. I've spoken around the world. We have global chapters in different parts of the world. We've just launched in Zimbabwe, so we're moving into Africa, where there is a lot of potential and a lot of hunger for this sort of technology. Because, you know, the truth of the matter is, some people can argue that blockchain technology is not necessarily a tool that we need in the Western world. However, it is being utilized because businesses see the benefits of utilizing it to decrease costs. So it's basically is a lot more transparent. It's business efficient in regards to costs, and so businesses are seeing the benefits of using blockchain technology, be it on the public blockchain or be it on a private blockchain. So yeah, that's a little bit of an introduction about me.
Lavinia, for the I was going to say layman, but that's an accidental section. For the lay people on the call, what is blockchain and how does it differ from Bitcoin?
Okay, sure. So blockchain ultimately is a distributed ledger technology. And so there are many distributed ledger technologies. And ultimately, you can think of a distributed ledger technology as an Excel sheet, right? It's a form of tech. It's a tool. It's a software. And with any distributed ledger, if there's accountants in the room, you know that a ledger ultimately shows what's going in, what's going out, and where it went to. What makes the blockchain, and when I talk about the blockchain, I'm talking about public blockchain, because you can have private, public, and hybrid. Okay, and it's quite, you know, evident as to why you would have a public and a hybrid blockchain, because of course data is something that we want to protect, and we also, for regulation and compliance reasons, we can't, you know, show our data or share, big companies can't share their data in a not transparent, but in a public way. So when I talk about the blockchain, I'm talking about public blockchain. And so I'm talking about platforms such as Bitcoin, such as Ethereum, such as Matic, so Polygon, Solana, and other various blockchain platforms. But to answer your question, Mark, so blockchain, as stated, is a DLT, and it basically records the movement of data from one wallet to another wallet. A wallet, in layman's term, is an account ultimately, but this account is encrypted. It is not owned by anyone. So one of the three key elements of blockchain technology is that it's transparent, it's decentralized, and decentralization ultimately means that it is not owned by anyone. Of course, if it's a private blockchain, it's owned by someone. And if it's a hybrid, then it will have partial ownership, right? And so the differences between centralization and decentralization. Why would someone want decentralization? Because we've seen many times over the years that a central figure can control and also manipulate the markets. And blockchain, particularly Bitcoin, was created to show that we don't need a middleman, such as a bank, an intermediary, such as a bank, to transfer liquidity, such as assets, money, okay? And that ultimately we can be controllers of our own banks. We can be our own creators of our own bank and have ownership of where our money goes and how it is sent. And by doing so, reduce the cost, right? So a great example of this is the remittance industry. The remittance industry is a billion-dollar, trillion-dollar industry. And many times individuals have to have some form of ID to be able to use a remittance company. Now, if you think about the people who use remittance companies, they're generally people sending money back to I hate the word third world economies, developing economies. And sometimes individuals in those developing economies do not have ID. That is correct, Sophie. It's a blockchain and in its decentralized form, and also cryptocurrencies are not regulated assets. But I will touch on that more in a moment. But just to go back to what I was saying, and so what individuals were seeing is that they could send Bitcoin to their friends and families in a developing country. It would happen immediately. There was no intermediary for it to go through. And because there was no intermediary person or element, the cost was reduced. And also their friends and families didn't need to prove their ID to be able to access those funds. And so there was many benefits as to why Bitcoin became very popular, particularly in developing countries, and for people here in the Western world, in the developed countries, to utilize it to send money back to their friends and family. So decentralization is the key essence of what makes blockchain different, and the fact that it's transparent, it's traceable, it's trackable. Why is this again important? For many people who want to source the provenance of the items which they're utilizing, be it food, be it clothing, be it fashion, all sorts of fashion. Sometimes they want to know, where is my, who is the farmer or the developer? How much are they getting paid? How can we prove this? What is the provenance of those items? And the blockchain is a great way in the supply chain ecosystem to be able to track that. And so a lot of companies are utilizing that to show how sustainable they are and how equitable they are being in the whole process. So the difference between blockchain and Bitcoin is that Bitcoin is a platform that runs on blockchain. If there is no blockchain, then Bitcoin cannot exist. Bitcoin was the first cryptocurrency that showed people that you didn't need a third-party intermediary to be able to send liquid assets to one party to a next. And another key element with blockchain is that there are different nodes, which we will call computers, and so they will all verify that transaction. So it's not just one person, hence why it is decentralized and not centralized. I hope that answers your question, Mark.
Wow. Sophie, I think you had some great questions there. I'm going to ask you to come on board. This is obviously an area you know a little bit about, I'm assuming from your questions, but come on and ask them.
No, it's really interesting to hear about Lavinia looking at this, as a force for good, and all the, great use case that it presents from people who maybe didn't have the same access to financial services, or to I suppose combat imbalance in terms of power in financial services. But yeah, from a risk and compliance perspective, which is my job, Lavinia, we are really worried about what the decentralization mean in terms of resilience, first of all, and therefore, how vulnerable those people who are part of this, cryptocurrencies and blockchain platform are in the absence of any supervision from a regulator. As a small bank in the UK, I do so much work. Me and my team, we're 12 people in total about risk and compliance for a firm of 120 people, and that's how much control we need to have as a regulated entity in the UK. And to hear that actually some platforms who are used to move billions are not regulated at all, and therefore they've got no strength, neither from a financial perspective or from a control perspective. Nobody checks that, for example, they've got a good cyber risk management framework, or nobody checks that, if something happens, they're not just going to stop operate and let a payment drop in the middle, and hundreds of or millions of people left out with their money lost. So that's, for me, is a big question. And the second aspect is, as you said, identification is the first step and a critical step in making sure that we understand who's transferring money to whom. But when in the womb, it's a lot about, are they good actors? Is that money for good reasons? And clearly, a huge part of that is fighting against terrorism, which, again, Lavinia, as I'm sure you're very aware of, affects more people in those developing countries that are on the receiving end of remittance. Yeah, terrorism. People suffer in Gaza. People suffer from Hamas, and in lots of countries. So removing those checks, what does it mean, therefore, for the strength of terrorist organization throughout the world?
Okay, two very deep questions, and I think it's important to say that I don't work in compliance and regulation, but I do. I interact with that area for a number of reasons. Simply because of the work that I do, I need to understand what the risks are. So the first thing I want to touch on is that, if in the first instance, if you're going to purchase crypto, you do need to go through regulation and compliance via a CEX. A CEX is a centralized exchange. Okay. Now, we use the word CEX versus DEX. So CEX, again, stands for centralized exchange, which is a crypto exchange such as Coinbase. And I'll talk about Coinbase because that's one of the big brand names in the industry. So when you open up an account with Coinbase, and this is your first foray into the blockchain space. Now, there are different ways to acquire cryptocurrency. So, for example, I already own various cryptocurrencies: Bitcoin, Ethereum, Ripple, etc., and I have nieces and nephews, and so I can just create a wallet, aka an account, and that can be on like on MetaMask. So that is not a CX. That's not a centralized exchange. And all I would do is just send Bitcoin to that account. That means my nieces and nephews who are under the age of 16, and obviously they can't go through regulation and compliance because they're underage, they will have a wallet which will have Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies in it. And it's under their name, which I control. But they did not go through a CEX, not just simply because they're underage, but because they didn't need to, because I just sent it directly to them. But generally speaking, when individuals will start their journey in this space, they will go to a CEX, a centralized exchange, and they will purchase Bitcoin or whatever cryptocurrency they wish to purchase. So at that moment in time, they have to open an account with Coinbase, and then they have to prove their ID, and they have to go through a number of regulation, know your NYC, know your customer, right? They have to go through all those checks. Once they own that wallet and they have bought their crypto, they're in the decentralized space. That means no one owns that decentralized space. So who are they going to answer to? So they can open up an account, another wallet, on a platform, for example, called Trust Wallet. And Trust Wallet, again, is not a CEX. And all they need to do is transfer the crypto that they've bought via Coinbase to that wallet, and then they're able to do whatever they want without any verification of who they are. Now, let's just go back to the start. You've got the taxman who is watching and looking at this space, and there's different reports that come out from the tax governance of any country. So we're here in the UK, so let's just talk about HMRC. And so they are tracking, and this is a key thing that you have to remember, Sophie, and everybody else listening, is that with the ledger, everything is tracked. You can see the movement of every single transaction. So if someone bought £100,000 worth of Bitcoin, and then they transferred it to a wallet, okay, The HMRC wouldn't be able to see who that wallet belonged to unless it's transferred, for example, to a Coinbase wallet, where they can then go to Coinbase and say, hey, who does this wallet address belong to? Because we can see it was transferred to this wallet, which is related to your platform. So there are different ways that individuals, HMRC, the legal professions can track the transaction and also find out who the owner of that wallet is. However, because it is a decentralized space, if I choose to move it to one place to another, that is up to me. And there's no one saying you need to do KYC. It's only at the beginning when you first start that journey. To answer your second question in regards to terrorism, this is what I will say. Does terrorism, or is not money, fiat currency, rather than crypto, still used more so than crypto in terrorism? And which is more easier to track? A cryptocurrency that is on a decentralized platform that you can track the movement of those cryptos and to the wallets. And with the advent of AI now can be used to say, hey, we want to track all the movements of this wallet. Where did it go? And AI can give you a report like that. So it's not a question of how or who is using it, or not even a question of how it's being used or who it's being used. It's a question of how can it be tracked to prove how it is being used. You cannot do that with fiat currency. And so there is that level of transparency. Okay.
Sophie, did that answer your question?
Yes, on the second point, very well indeed. It's really interesting perspective. I hadn't thought about that in that sense before. But on the resilience of the platforms, the public ones that are not owned by anyone, what do you think about that, Lavinia? Is there a risk that therefore people could just, be left be left with losses because the platform itself doesn't have the right resilience?
The thing is, I think that in your perspective, you're thinking about resilience in a different format than this decentralized world works. So in regards to, for example, Bitcoin, that is a platform that can't just be shut down, because there are, like, as I touched upon, there's different nodes, and it just can't be shut down. And there's only a certain amount of Bitcoin as well. And we're actually moving to a halving. Now, don't get me wrong, there are some platforms that are just pure scams, but platforms such as Ethereum, such as Bitcoin, such as Solana, such as Polygon, and Solana and Polygon, for example, are second layers. And I know this is going into a bit more depth, but you've got Ethereum, which is a first layer, and then you've got Solana and Polygon, which are second layers, which are basically built on top of the Ethereum blockchain. But they've proven that they are resilient, and they won't just shut down overnight, because who's going to shut it down? There isn't a person who can literally shut it down. It's all algorithm and encryption and data ultimately, and it's all very digitalized.
Yeah, I thought it happened already twice that Bitcoin platform actually got a victim of hacking attack, and actually, where billion of the equivalent of billion of dollar were stolen.
No, I think you're talking about CEX, centralized exchanges, where they were hacked, and then the accounts of the wallets in that exchange, they were hacked and funds were taken.
Yeah.
Because you got to remember, Bitcoin is a native token to the Bitcoin platform. So that platform is creating the Bitcoin. Yeah. And then the wallets are created on the exchanges or on different platforms that are holding the wallets, like Trust Wallet. And so it wasn't the platform, it's the centralized exchanges.
Okay. So in your view, the centralized exchanges therefore are almost less resilient. They're more subject to cyber attack than the public ones, which are even more decentralized and therefore, as you say, can't be really shut down or hacked.
So a centralized exchange is centralized ultimately.
Yeah.
And
So
whereas
that's where you're saying their weakness comes from.
yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And I mean, like, Coinbase has been attacked a number of times, but you got to remember this is a nascent arena. We're still building, we're still developing. And with that, new solutions are coming on board. And so, at the end of the day, there will be attacks. And but those attacks are building the resilience which you talk about.
Because we learn from them.
Just a point on the centralized exchanges. The centralized exchanges use the same technology as the traditional exchanges, like the London Stock Exchange, etc. They are the aspect which is on the blockchain is just the tracking of records, but the functioning of the exchange is exactly like another traditional exchange. So I would say the protection and the is not just about technology. The resilience of these exchanges needs to be aligned with the resilience of traditional exchanges through governance and through regulatory requirements. So if there are outages, if there is hacking of these centralized exchanges, to me, it's because, and they are not, they are accepted or they happen, it's because there isn't the full regulatory environment that protects an exchange like that with like a traditional exchange. And outages, there are outages which are not related to risk or to hacking, which happen to centralized exchanges, and which are deemed as acceptable, but they are not acceptable at all on a traditional exchange because they deal with much more institutional investors, etc. And this is not acceptable to have this kind of outage. So I think it's just a question of regulatory environment and governance, and everything needs to be aligned, to me.
Yeah, there is definitely that. Thank you, Leila. Go ahead.
So a quick question from me, if I may. Talking about sort of anti-money laundering. So when Sophie's bank has a request to move money from A to B, it's at the point that she gets that request that she does her anti-money laundering checks and makes sure that well, she's already made sure that her client's a good client, but she also has a responsibility before moving the payment to make sure that the recipient is a good person as well.
And sanctions as well, not just
Yes.
ML checks.
Yeah. But Lavinia, what you seem to be saying in terms of within blockchain and Bitcoin is that the regulator or someone can monitor the transaction, but by the time the transaction has been done, is it too late?
Well, once a transaction is done, you cannot undo a transaction.
Yeah,
it's done.
Yeah. So if I was a bad person and Katie was a bad person, and if I was had an account with GIB, they would have stopped me having the account just like they would at the exchange. But then I've got an account and I'm transferring money to bad person Katie. Sophie's bank would stop that payment happening in a blockchain. If I was doing it via blockchain, it would happen, and you might find out after. As a regulator, you might find out about it after the event if you happen to be monitoring it.
Well, there's no regulator to catch that. If it's to be clear,
or the authority.
If you were well, an authority, depending if they're searching for how a terrorist front, for example, is being funded. And so if there's a difference between a wallet, it's called a custodian wallet, and a non-custodial, right? So the difference between a custodial wallet is that it belongs to the platform. So as I touched upon, Coinbase is a CEX, centralized exchange, right? So when you open up an account with them and they approve it, that is called a custodial wallet, Why? Because they actually own that wallet, that account. What that also means is if I can't remember my password to get into Coinbase, I can contact Coinbase and say, hey, I can't remember my password to get into my account. Can you help me? And they can help you. If it's a non-custodial wallet, for example, such as Trust Wallet or MetaMask, that means that you are the owner of your keys. That means if you lose your keys, you cannot email Trust Wallet or MetaMask and say, hey, I've lost my keys. Can you send me my keys? They will say, we don't have your keys because it's non-custodial. So non-custodial means that you are fully responsible for that wallet. Now, if I have a non-custodial wallet, and for example, Kenzie's a bad actor, and I'm a bad actor, and I've got money because I put money through Coinbase, which is now in my wallet, and I now want to send that money to Kenzie's wallet. But of course, it's not under Kenzie's name as a bad actor. It's just under the encryption, the numbers, the long number. Then I can send that. And no one can stop me from doing that because it's a non-custodial wallet. The only time that would be questioned is after the fact, if the authorities, for whatever reason, have done their tracking and they now want to know why I sent certain amount of money to Kenzie, and they would know it's me because they could see that I sent the money from my Bitcoin wallet, for example, via my custodial wallet in Coinbase to my non-custodial wallet, MetaMask, Trust Wallet, and then I now sent it to Kenzie to her non-custodial wallet. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Lavinia,
I feel as if we're putting you on the spot here, Lavinia, and thank you. Sorry, somebody else had a question there.
Yeah, sorry, it was me. Quick one, Lavinia. So the receiver of the cryptocurrency through blockchain or any other platform, I don't know if there are more platforms, but the receiver of the currency, the cryptocurrency, would you say they can only be identified if they are trying to convert the cryptocurrency into traditional form of currency?
Correct. So if they've transferred the fiat to crypto, whatever the crypto is, then there will be some sort of ID, right? Some sort of ID check. And of course, in the fiat world, people will use aliases and all the rest of it. But the general everyday person, they're going to use their proper ID, right? Yeah. So fiat, so when you're having, just like any exchange, that exchange between fiat to crypto, you need to go through KYC. And then if they are trying to now turn that money back into fiat because they want it into their bank account, they will have to go through a CEX to change the crypto back into fiat. Now, what alias or ID or, KYC checks they've done, one doesn't know, but the authorities or whoever's tracking it will be able to say, okay, this is the name and the details of that account that funds was then transferred from crypto to fiat.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. You're welcome.
Brilliant. Any other questions? Lavinia, you took and made legal precedent. Do you want to talk about that and the journey you went through there, and what the background was?
Sure. So one of the things that I just want to, before I touch on that, I always like to give people an overview of blockchain, the ecosystem, so that they can have a better feel and an understanding of how it works. So imagine, the UK is obviously well known for its industriousness, and we went through an industrial revolution. And what we're going through now is, we could call it a digital revolution, digital data orientated revolution, right? Across the world, not just in the UK, of course. So let's go back to that industrial revolution times. And one of the key fundamental elements that drove the industrial revolution was the railways, right? So think of blockchain technology as a train track, okay? And then, as we know, there are different train brands. You've got Eastern Network, Southern Rail, Eurotunnel, etc., right? So imagine these trains, right? These train companies as the protocols, the blockchain, the various blockchain platforms, Bitcoin, Ethereum, Solana, ADA, Polygon, etc., right? So these are the different train brands. And then you've got the train tracks, okay? Now, you've got the trains and they've got different brand names, and then they have carriages. Inside the carriages, they are carrying different assets, digital assets. So these assets will look like gold bars, the native crypto of that platform, potentially pictures, NFTs, music, NFTs, also maybe different let's say certificates, which could represent tokenization, the tokenization of a real world asset, such as a property, which has now been tokenized, and then it's on the blockchain and it's split into parts, okay? So all of these things are digital assets, and these trains are carrying these digital assets. Now, if there's no rail track, that means there's no platform. And if there's no rail tracks, there's no branded trains. And if there's no branded trains, that means there's no digital assets for those trains to create. So the railway track is the blockchain technology that helps these different platforms to run. And then these platforms will create different assets, asset classes, digital asset classes, which is then produced and held on that blockchain platform protocol. Does that make sense? Okay, great. So what happened with me was that I owned 2 digital assets, and these were NFTs, non-fungible tokens, and they were created by a blue chip company called Boss Beauties, and they've worked with Barbie, Mattel, they've worked with the New York Stock Exchange, so they're a very respected brand in the digital asset, blockchain, Web3 space, okay? So I worked with them. They gifted me these 2 NFTs. It was held in my MetaMask wallet, which is a non-custodial wallet. So not a wallet held on Coinbase or anything like that, and nor was it a cold wallet. And so there's a difference between a cold wallet and a hot wallet. A hot wallet is something that is held online. So it's hot. That means it's online. And then a cold wallet looks like a USB, and you plug it in, plug it out, and then you can put it in a drawer or put it in a safe, right? Depending on what assets you have on that wallet, okay? So I held it in a non-custodial hot wallet, meaning it was on the internet. And it's my wallet, so my keys. If I lose the keys, I lose all the assets. But sometimes when you're using third parties, so example, I was using the MetaMask wallet, there can be little holes in it, right? And if you're smart enough and intelligent enough, you can, not necessarily you as us, but a technical person, a coder, a developer, they can manipulate it. And as I said before, this is a nascent space. And there are going to be problems, and there's going to be, these sort of things happening, which then allows the different platforms and the ecosystem as a whole to beef up their security and to create solutions to the problems. But anyhow, because I am in this space and I have been in this space for a while, therefore I'm early. Sometimes we're all going to fall foul of these sort of situations. And so my 2 digital assets were stolen from my wallet. And because doing what I do, I decided to take it to the High Courts of England and Wales. And in doing so, the judge agreed that the assets were my property, and I became the first person in the world to be granted a proprietary injunction. Now, what was happening beforehand was that one was granted a worldwide freezing order, which basically meant that those assets legally were frozen. But what my case did, it stated that NFTs are property, therefore they are my property. And so the injunction that I got was a proprietary injunction. And this had an impact not only on the legal landscape in regards to digital assets, i.e. NFTs, but also in regards to taxation and also in regards to insurance. Why? Because if it's your property, then you are now, that the law is now saying that because it's your property, you have liabilities, tax liabilities, and also you should be able to now insure your asset, your property as a digital asset, if for example, an insurance company was offering that. And so, yes, that case law is now in the history books. It's part of my legacy, and it's being used around the world.
Wow.
So the issue, was it related to the fact that you had decided to be yourself the self-custodian of your wallet, or it has nothing to do with the type of wallet?
It had nothing to do with the type of wallet. It had to do just with people, bad actors being in the space. Because as we touched upon before, there has been outrages with Coinbase. People have lost their money through Coinbase, and that's a custodial wallet. So these bad actors, they're very, very clever, very, very smart, and they will look at different ways to acquire your assets. So it doesn't matter if it's non-custodial, if it's custodial, there are bad actors who will find different ways to acquire your assets.
And is it not a question of, I would have thought that a custodian as a wallet called and held and managed by a regulated custodian, because now custodians of wallets can be regulated, would provide that security. So I'm just wondering, why would you still keep a self-custodied wallet hot? What is the point of doing that if there is much more risk than just going to a cold secured custodian managed by a proper regulated custodian?
Sure. So there are a number of answers to this. The first one is choice. At the end of the day, I believe in decentralization, and I like the fact that I am the owner of my keys, my wallet. Okay, so that's number one. Number two, Coinbase is a custodial, so they offer custodial wallets, but not for NFTs. You've got to remember that there are different forms of digital assets. So you've got cryptocurrency. And so a platform like Coinbase, their wallets, you cannot hold NFTs. At this present moment in time, you can't hold an NFT in there.
Yeah, but you would hold it on a cold wallet maintained by a custodian, your NFTs, no?
No. So just to be clear, you've got a custodian wallet, which is online. You've got a non-custodial wallet, which is online. So both of them are hot because they're online. A cold wallet, non-custodial, because if someone says they hold a cold wallet, it's non-custodial, full stop, because that wallet is in their hands. It looks like a USB. So again, if they lose the keys to that wallet, or if they lose that USB, they can potentially just purchase another USB, and as long as they've got the keys that was set up, i.e. the password on that USB looking wallet, they can transfer it to the new wallet, to the new USB. Okay, but you are the owner of it. It's not Coinbase are giving you that cold wallet, that USB, and then they are custodials of it. No, it doesn't work that way. If it's a cold wallet, that means that you are the custodial, you are the owner of it, and therefore it's classed as a non-custodial wallet. And to go back to answering your question, there were a number of problems and issues for some people to hold their NFTs on a cold wallet. So the main suppliers of a cold wallet are Ledger and Treasure, and also Ledger has also had its outrages and its problems. So it's not something that you can just avoid. There's always risks in everything that you do, be it that you may lose your keys or there may be an outrage on that platform. But ultimately, just to reiterate again, Coinbase, you can hold cryptocurrencies, but not NFTs at this present moment in time. With a cold wallet, a USB, there were issues in holding NFTs. or it was a very convoluted way of doing it. So for that reason, I held it on MetaMask, and people do it all the time. And yes, bad actors came along and stole my NFTs. And again, it's about choice. You may be all for centralized and being, having someone else be responsible for your assets. But the reason why this space is opening up is because some people don't want to give all that power to a centralized figure, to a bank, to a Coinbase. They want to control it for themselves. And that is their choice.
Mm-hmm. So Lavinia, just going back to your court case, did you investigate the insurance around those assets and the potential tax implications?
So at this present moment in time, that because of my case, this came afterwards. So I no longer own my assets because they were stolen from me. So I didn't need to go down that route of looking at insurance or looking at taxation because it was not applicable to me since I no longer hold my assets.
Lavinia, we're coming towards the end of our hour. I'd like to give you the opportunity really to talk about the community that you're creating, Women in BT.
Women in Blockchain Talks.
Yeah,
sure.
And what that does, and maybe how people who are interested can be involved. So over to you.
Sure. So Women in Blockchain Talks, the essence of Women in Blockchain Talks, it has 4 key functions. And the first function was to educate people about blockchain technology, what it is, why they should get involved in it. So, advocating for this technology. A lot of people are talking about AI, but one of the key elements about AI is that how do you prove the provenance of what is created, what is being put out there? We all know and are aware of fake news, okay? And also fake images, right? So what I see, and I welcome AI. I mean, I utilize AI, and I think the whole space of emerging technology is so interesting. But what blockchain does, it can help verify the provenance. Remember, I was talking about the provenance of where that data came from, because ultimately what we're dealing with is data in different forms, okay? And that data is being utilized for AI and also to be recorded on the blockchain. And so what blockchain does, it can verify the provenance of the data that has been utilized in that AI production or creation, so to speak, okay? And of course, I haven't gone into the various different case uses of blockchain technology, not only in finance, but also in academia, in supply chain, and all of these things have they're all intrinsically linked, okay? So with that being said, it's very important that people understand what blockchain is. And so Women in Blockchain Talks about advocating for that. And I just want to make clear one thing. The reason why I think it's important that people understand the technology and what it is and how it works is because there is a difference between just being a consumer of the technology, right? And if you're just a consumer of the technology, then it doesn't really actually matter, how it works to you. But one of the key purposes of Women in Blockchain Talks and why I do what I do and why I take the time to speak is because there's not enough women leading, building, creating, sharing, adding their value to the space. So in order for you to do all those things, you need to understand what is the technology, what is its purpose, or what purpose can it have, what is its potential, and how you can add your value in that space. And also, it is the future of work. You're going to be seeing a lot more. We've seen over the last 20, 30 years how technology has had an impact on, the future of work, on how we work, how we interact. It's going to have an impact on all our jobs and the way we do it and how we utilize these tools. So my thing is, I don't want women to be left behind. So again, there's advocacy. And then once I tell people, it's like, well, okay, great, you've told me what it is. It sounds great. What has it got to do with me? How do I utilize it? So it's about education. And then also it's about promoting DEI. This is about Women in Blockchain Talks. And then also creating those leaders, particularly women leaders, for the emerging, for the jobs and the economy, emerging tech is creating now and will continue to create, you know? So making sure that women are part of that conversation and leading the conversation rather than just chasing from behind, as we've seen far too many times in various industries and fields of work. And so what am I doing? So we have a free community that people can engage with. There's lots of people that you can connect with, mentors. There's training courses that we run, such as Lunch and Learn. So if your company is interested in bringing me in and doing a Lunch and Learn, well, we offer a course book, 60 to 90. It's a 60 to 90 minute Lunch and Learn. So I can do that. We can create something more bespoke rather than the generic Lunch and Learn course that I have. We also have a membership, and then we have 5 verticals in that membership. So it's career, it's corporate, and corporate stands for SMEs, businesses, entrepreneurs. And then also we have creatives, and then we have crypto, and then the final one is consumer. And so we have different information for whichever vertical is more aligned to where you're at. Of course, you can access all areas, but it's just a way to streamline that journey for the individual who's starting in this space. Because again, there's a lot of information, and the question, and one of the things that stops people from really diving in is, where do I start? Who do I listen to? What do I do next? And so Women in Blockchain Talks has created not only a free community to get you started, but also a membership to help you dive in if you are taking this space seriously and you want to, you know, build a name and build your career or transition your career into the space. So yeah, that's Women in Blockchain Talks.
And people can contact you via your LinkedIn profile, via Katie, yes, if they want to. Or I think your details are on our website.